Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
Broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. We have an interesting episode. We have a great episode for you today. We have a solution that's just so cutting edge. I absolutely love it. The cloud-first solution and then some. We have Vadim Vladimirskiy with us, and he is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Nerdio. And Nerdio makes a really neat solution for soup to nuts of management, of layering, of just managing the entire cloud desktop as a service VDI methodology, ideology solution. Really interesting technology, and I can't wait to share this with you. I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I enjoyed recording it. So with no further ado, let's just dive into it. Here's my interview with Vadim, the CEO at Nerdio. Okay, Vadim, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. I'm excited about this because I get to learn about what you guys are doing and, of course, share it with the community here. So, thank you so much. As always, let's just jump into this. So for my first question is, who are you and what do you do over at Nerdio? So who are you and what do you do over at Nerdio?
So I'm Vadim Vladimirskiy. I am one of the co-founders of Nerdio and its CEO. And I helped envision, build, and now sort of evangelize for our business, our model, and the technology that we've created to help others in the market.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I'm excited to learn all about you guys. So I know a little bit, but I'm excited. I always say. I joke about it almost every other podcast. My favorite aspect is I get to learn along with everyone else. So I'm looking forward to this. So that being said, can you give us, who is Nerdio? Why did you co-found this company? What are you guys trying to do? What's the objective?
Sure. I'd love to tell you about that. So, Nerdio started out as a managed services provider, an MSP in the Chicagoland area about 12 and a half years ago. And for the first 10 years of our existence, we were basically kind of a unique MSP that focused solely on hosted infrastructures, right? Back then, cloud wasn't a term that was widely used, so we called it infrastructure as a service or hosted infrastructure, various variations thereof. And what we've been doing is we've been creating these IT environments for small and mid-sized businesses that included things like their servers and desktops, initially using terminal server and then RDS and then VDI, and hosting them in a couple of different data centers that we operated in the Midwest and on the East Coast. So that's kind of how we started. What we realized over the years of being an MSP is that other MSPs are kind of going through similar challenges in terms of trying to evolve their business, trying to adopt cloud and figure out how to build a practice around it. And we created quite a bit of technology that we used internally to help automate many of the processes that our internal team, the engineering team that built the systems, the onboarding team that brought the customers in, and ultimately the support team that supported them on the help desk side. We created a lot of automation and a lot of technology to help ourselves be more efficient. And then a couple of years ago, we decided, hey, we've created a fairly successful practice around providing these hosted IT infrastructures. And we wanted to go ahead and build a platform that other MSPs could leverage to create such a practice in their own regions, where they could go and sort of become like us in their regions using the technology, the know-how, and the expertise that we've developed in over a decade. So,
Very
at a high level, that's kind of how it came about.
Very cool. So it's a byproduct of what, at the original business, so to speak. It's the almost like the intellectual property piece of it, the secret sauce.
Absolutely. And I mean, we very consciously took all of the tribal knowledge and everything we've developed in terms of, processes and expertise, and we've created software that encapsulates and integrates all of that knowledge, in technology, as opposed to just being in people's heads and on checklists.
Sure. It makes total sense. So you guys got into the desktop delivery space, obviously, as you mentioned. So, what do you guys, how do you overcome the issues with, what are you trying to accomplish there? Can you maybe describe the product, that you're offering in more detail?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, we started in the desktop space very, very early on. I'm not even sure there were, any other companies in the market when we started doing desktop hosting sort of as a service. As I mentioned, we started with terminal services on Windows Server 2003. We did a little bit of RDS. And then around 2009, 2010, we made a complete shift from doing, session-based desktops with RDS to doing VDI with dedicated desktops using VMware View at the time, or now Horizon. So we've created, again, a lot of this knowledge about how to be successful in managing the images and managing the profiles and dealing with application virtualization, and sort of how to take an environment and the one that's typically an on-prem one, leveraging physical devices and create a virtual equivalent of it and make our clients successful. What we found in the process is that the approach of looking at the desktop in isolation was really difficult and really, doomed to fail. If you just take the desktop out of the equation and you try to, provide desktop as a service without taking the rest of the IT environment into the account, you run into performance issues, as we all know, if you separate the data from the desktop itself. There are lots of different challenges that come about. So early on, we decided that we're going to design what we call an IT as a service offering. And an IT as a service offering was really kind of an end-to-end superset of all of the most common cloud technologies. And, IT as a service, what we realized is that every decent IT environment included like these 5 pillars or 5 core components. At the center of it was a desktop, whether it's a Windows desktop or it's a remote session or it's a Mac or a tablet. Every user needs an environment to run their applications and access their data from, right? Then you have your servers. Those are becoming less and less relevant as applications are moving into the cloud, but you still have, your identity, your Active Directory, you have legacy applications that still run on servers, certain file shares, things like that. So that's component number 2. Component number 3 that's present in every IT environment is the productivity and collaboration platform, right? So whether that be Office 365 or Google G Suite, that's always present and core to the IT environment. And then the final 2 things, one is backup and disaster recovery. And we've always told our customers, backup is critical, obviously, to your system. And there's really no technical problem that we can't fix for you, with the exception of one. If you don't have a backup and there's something that goes majorly wrong, we can't help you. So backup is critical. Disaster recovery is critical. And then the final piece is security. And security nowadays, as we all know, is very top of mind for all organizations, I would say. So by realizing that every IT department or every IT environment consists of those 5 core technologies, we've created an offering that packages them all together and integrates them very tightly to allow you to have sort of a common provisioning, management, and optimization that helps manage all of those technologies as one unit, as opposed to looking them on piecemeal basis with point solutions.
Makes sense. So you mentioned Horizon View. Do you guys work with Citrix at all, and does that even matter?
We don't work with Citrix at the moment. We currently are working, again, either with the RDS technologies or with the VMware stack of products.
Sure.
So Citrix is not something we currently offer.
Yeah, Yeah, the Horizon View is well, RDS is by itself a great solution, but VMware has done an amazing job with Horizon over the years, and it just keeps getting better and better and better, and really offers a very nice user experience. So, can you talk a bit about the user experience that you guys are able to deliver?
Sure. So again, from our standpoint, the customer that we cater to is an MSP, an IT services provider that wants to offer their customers an end-to-end IT solution leveraging the cloud, right? So if you think about that being, sort of the target customer for us, what we do is we provide them all the tools in terms of both technology as well as, things like marketing, contracts, collateral, TCOs, things like that, help them actually go to market with it. But, I'll focus on the technology part. So, realizing that every IT environment consists of those 5 core components, and deciding that, look, it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel on any of those, because different companies have done an excellent job and spent billions and billions of dollars creating those things. We're just going to pick the best ones, and we're going to write a management layer that wraps them all together. So what we've created is a provisioning engine that builds an entire IT environment with all of those pieces. So, with virtual desktops and Active Directory and Azure AD and Office 365 integration and ADFS and antivirus and spam filtering, really soup to nuts with just a couple of clicks and less than 2 hours of elapsed time. Compare that to what we used to have to do when, we have an engineer who does the system build out for a new customer. Let's say they've done 2 or 3 dozen of these in the past. It would take them about 2.5 weeks of full-time work to fully stand up this environment from the bottom up. And we've been able to completely eliminate that process, not only speeding it up for our partners, but also making sure that every time they do it, it's standard, it's perfect, and it works right out of the box the first time, because there's less room for error because of the way that it's standardized.
Go ahead.
So that's kind of one component. The other component of the system is, okay, well, once this environment is up and running, you still have your customer running in some other IT environment, whether it be on-premise or it's in another cloud. You got to onboard them, right? You got to bring them into this new Nerdio environment that you've just created with a couple of clicks and 2 hours of elapsed time. So we've created a lot of discovery and onboarding tools that look at the existing environment and sort of convert the information, look at the directory and recreate all the user accounts, create the desktops, help mirror the data from the file server that's on-prem into the Nerdio system. So really a whole suite of discovery and onboarding functionality that simplifies the process of actually taking a customer from point A to point B, which we found ourselves, that was a very critical part of customer success is, you got to have a good experience in onboarding them, and it's got to be non-disruptive to the customer.
Very cool, very cool. So what's your typical customers in an MSP? Do you have like integrators that are creating sort of MSPs for their customers? I'm seeing that quite often nowadays.
Yeah, so we typically, the most successful partners for us are those who are already in the market offering IT services. The people who understand Office 365 and they understand Active Directory and they know desktop management in a traditional environment. They're typically sort of best positioned to take the automation we've created and just kind of apply it in the cloud and be able to continue managing their customers in a similar way to how they're doing it today.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm seeing is that we have a lot of, the traditional VARs, right? And as the business starts moving into the cloud and these guys are starting to create managed services solutions, right? Because they do understand the desktop, they do own the customers, they do understand AD and backup, and all that stuff. So they're starting to put together offerings, but then they have to sort of recreate the wheel, right? Do all the automation, everything that, the 5 steps that you just talked about. And that is, like I mentioned earlier, that's sort of the secret sauce of it, right? It's how did they do that? If they could use a solution like what you offer, that gives them a turnkey solution and then in return offer that offering to their customers, right?
Exactly. I mean, they sort of leverage the experience and the learning we've done over so many years,
Sure.
and they have a turnkey way. I mean, literally, they can go on the site, sign up for an account, and 2 hours later, the customer is up and running in the cloud. They just have to migrate the data, add the users, and install applications, and it's ready to go. They don't have to know anything about Horizon or the intricacies of setting up PCOIP, or how to apply the GPOs to make sure that Office gets properly activated when the user logs in.
Very cool.
We do all of that for them, so they can literally just spin up the environment, add the users, and the users can start logging in and be productive in the system right away.
Oh, very neat. Very, very neat. So, yeah, wow. What do I say? That's a very impressive solution. I like that a lot. So, VDI, VDI, I call what you guys are doing is more DaaS, right? Because it's desktop as a service more than, like traditional, on-prem VDI.
Sure.
What are you hearing from your customers as far as, what VDI, the benefits of VDI or versus, the traditional desktop delivery methods?
I mean, they're definitely looking at a solution like ours in order to streamline their operations, make sure that their customers are, set up in a very standardized way, to make it easier for them to manage them ultimately, right? Because as we all know, that the IT talent is quite in high demand right now, and for a service provider that has 100, 200 customers or more, if each environment is unique and heterogeneous and runs on different types of, one is on Dell, one is on HPE, another one is on Lenovo, and you have, this antivirus here and that antivirus there, it becomes very difficult to manage and difficult to scale your business. So I think a lot of them are looking for a way to standardize, what their customers are running and how they're managing it. And with Nerdio, every customer environment starts out literally identical, and then it gets customized to meet the customer's need, obviously. But, the IP address scheme, the Active Directory layout, the, things like that, the server names, all of those things are standard, which makes it very easy for a service provider and their engineers and technicians to service multiple customers without having to remember the nuances of each one, or without, super extensive documentation and the nuances of each one. I mentioned the first two pieces, the provisioning and onboarding, right? But those two things generally happen at the beginning of taking a customer from on-prem to cloud. The biggest piece, I would say, of the solution is our management interface. And what our management interface does, we have this thing called the three-click philosophy. And the three-click philosophy is that any task, no matter how complex it is, if it's a common enough task and we've decided to integrate it into our portal, should take 3 clicks or less to perform inside of the Nerdio admin portal, or as we call it, nap for short, because it does all the work for you while you can take a nap.
Cool.
So what that management interface does is, for example, if you go to add a new employee, so let's say a new employee starts at your customer's organization. So typically you have to figure out, log into Active Directory, add them there, add them to the security groups, go into Office 365, license them, add any email aliases you need, install Office, set a desktop for backup, install the antivirus, right? So there's a long checklist that has to happen every time a new employee starts with the company. What we've done is we've created a user management screen that really pulls the information from all of the underlying systems, so that when you add a new employee, it goes into each and every system and does what it needs to do within that system. So within 2 minutes of adding a user, that user gets an email, a welcome email with their username and password and login instructions and a video on what they need to do next. And they can literally start working, 2 minutes from the time the administrator hits submit on their user form. And they log in and their Office is activated, their Outlook is set up, AV is installed, this computer is being backed up, everything is ready to go, and they can be productive right away. So you can imagine that, first of all, makes our partners operationally more efficient, but also it allows them to use, lower skilled resources. You don't need to have your VDI engineer involved in every single new user account that's being added. You can have your level 1, level 2 help desk handling these requests from your customers, or even delegate that permission to the customer themselves, and they can self-serve themselves.
Very cool, very cool. So I wanted to ask you about the admin portal, and you just sort of explained it a little bit. Anything else to add? Any more detail you want to explain about, the interfaces that, the admin tools that you deliver?
Sure. So, I mentioned user functionality, so onboarding users, archiving users is sort of the other common one I like to use, or replacing users. Let me give you a use case. An employee is terminated and someone else is hired to replace them, right? So, in IT, we all know what's involved. You got to disable the accounts, you have to copy out the data, you have to reassign their mailbox to someone else, you have to add the new user, go through that entire process. In the NAP, the way that process looks is you literally just click on the drop down on the existing user, say replace user, type in the first name, last name, and email address you want to use, and it will go in and automatically create a new user account, disable the old one, take the mailbox and reassign it to the new user, take all of the data, copy it into the new user's desktop in My Documents folder, and basically do all of that automation that, can save up to an hour or two each time that happens. And it's it's done very easily. So that's on the user management side. We also have modules that manage the server side of things, and the servers in our environment run on a hypervisor, on vSphere, and typically to spin up a new server, if you're using the VMware, the VMware stack of products, you got to log into your web client. You have to know where the template is, how to spin it up, how to add it to the domain, set up the resources you want to allocate to it. In our environment, it's literally just a single click. You click Add Server, select the OS, give the server a name, click Submit. That server comes online, joins the domain automatically, and then you have a drop-down where you can change the amount of CPU and RAM allocation to that server. So, server management becomes super trivial. If you want to, for instance, grow a drive on a data drive on the file server, single click, you click on the drive in the NAP, type in the new size. Not only does it grow the virtual disk attached to the VM, but it actually expands the Windows partition for you, all without rebooting the VM. So the users can stay connected and they'll just see that shared drive grow by however much you decided to grow it by. Again, those are some of the examples of the type of automation that's in the platform. It abstracts a lot of the complexity from the underlying core components that some service providers may not be familiar with, may not be hands-on experience with. But with the Nerdio admin portal, they can still run their customers' environments in this advanced way without having to train their staff on all the underlying complex technology.
Very cool, very cool. Now you're working with VMware's stack, and you mentioned the stack a few times. Do you support the other technologies in there? The mobility and things of that nature.
We work with some, not too many of the ones that are really enterprise targeted. Typically, the consumers of the service from our service provider partners are SMBs. They're generally in the 10 to 500 or 10 to 250 primarily employee space. So there are some components that we're using. We're using a lot of Microsoft components, Office 365, and all of those services on the mobile security. We leverage more of those than on the VMware side. VMware side is mostly the virtualizations of servers and desktops for us.
Okay. Makes total sense. And of course, if a user's on a mobile device, let's say an iPad, for example, they would just, use their traditional client to log in.
They use the VMware client to log in, or, with Office 365, which is a core component of the system. They obviously have access to all of their data and email and everything offline and online, and lots of abilities that way.
You got it. Just the traditional way they would. Makes total sense.
So, so the use case for this, as opposed to being a point solution, like, you mentioned DAS, so a lot of DAS vendors that we see out there, the use case they're trying to address are remote users, bring your own device users, kind of a remote office that you're opening up, and you don't want to buy new PCs, so you may put them on some hosted desktops. And although those use cases can work within Nerdio, there's certainly nothing technically that's limiting from using Nerdio for that type of an environment. But what we try to accommodate are really IT replacements. So this is kind of a holistic replacement of an IT system that may be cobbled together or maybe running on-prem with a fully vetted, and sort of production tested over many, many years design running in the cloud in a flexible, up-to-date, scalable infrastructure without sacrificing any user performance.
I totally understand. So basically, you're able to give an MSP a software suite, right, to basically do everything they need, and then a company of an SMB like you mentioned they don't need IT. The entire from soup to nuts, from adding a new user to procuring apps or what have you, is all done for you in a very automated way. You don't need IT. It's like you said, a help desk guy can do it, or maybe a secretary in some of the smaller businesses, right?
Exactly, yeah, and that's exactly what we're seeing is a lot of the delegated IT management is given to the person who makes sure that a new employee has a desk to sit at when they start can be the person that sets them up in all of the IT components and gives them email and gives them security access to all the right applications, just because of how easy we've made that process.
Perfect. So a managed an MSP, they would buy your software, and then it instantly they have everything they need, and become basically a very profitable business, right?
That's the objectives. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we've been hearing from our MSP partners over, I would say, last 6 to 12 months is, hey, I really love the automation and how easy this is to do. But can you make this work in a public cloud? And specifically, can you make it work in Azure, right? So instead of hosting the actual workloads in Nerdio's data centers, can I have those workloads running in Azure and then use your automation to kind of drive and orchestrate and manage everything? So earlier this year, we launched our Nerdio for Azure product, which sort of applies the same philosophy and really sort of extends the same interface. It's more or less a port of our existing management software into the Azure realm, where an MSP that's also a cloud services provider for Microsoft, the CSP, can come to their customers and say, hey, I can provide you a complete end-to-end IT solution that's going to run entirely in the Microsoft cloud. They can sell them the Azure consumption, they can sell them the Office 365 license, and they use Nerdio to orchestrate, provision, and drive that entire process. So instead of running it in a private cloud data center, they're running it in the public cloud.
Very interesting. So in MSP, they basically they just almost turn into a sales arm, right?
Well, sales and service, right? They still need to do things like what they typically do is they take our technology and then they layer their unique services on it. So things like help desk, consulting, application development and support, migration services, proactive monitoring, all of those things that are the high margin items, the ones that the MSPs want to be doing, right? They don't want to be infrastructure as a service at 5-point discount, right? That's not what they're in the business for.
Yep.
But all of the high value services they provide, they just layer on top of the Nerdio platform, whether the workloads are running in Azure or in the private cloud, and they can, charge the same amount to the customer they would, but make a much larger margin because of how efficient they would be in delivering that service.
I totally get it, and they don't even have to have infrastructure. They can run it either in the Azure public cloud or on the Nerdio infrastructure. Correct?
Exactly, that's the goal. I mean, we're definitely seeing a very clear trend. Maybe even 2 years ago, MSPs were when they were struggling with they were contemplating, okay, what is going to be our cloud strategy over the next 5 years? The option of, well, let's just build our own infrastructure was definitely one that was entertained.
Sure.
In the last 6 months, and we talked to a lot of MSPs on a daily basis, I don't even think any of them are considering that. Nobody's saying, you know what, I have one option is I can do it in the public cloud. Another option I can do it with, a smaller service provider like Nerdio. And, option C would be I'm just going to go out and build it myself. I don't even think that option is on the table anymore for most people. Nobody wants to have infrastructure anymore, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you there. That's very interesting. That was the one piece I was missing. Is that you guys control the MSP just gets to manage it. They get to deal with installing the application, supporting the applications, dealing with conflicts, training, that type of stuff, right? The IT service piece. Like you said, the stuff that they really want to do and the stuff that they're very good at doing, right? The value added piece and the infrastructure piece, the automation piece, the setting up, the secret sauce. You take care of all that, and they're just left to sell the service and manage the service, which makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting. So I have to ask, competition. There are so many there, although you're very unique in what you guys offer. Why would I want to go with the Nerdio solution versus, one, do it myself, do the on-prem sort of solution, right? The traditional VDI or traditional, computers, or, something like a traditional, different type of MSP. Make sense?
Sure. So you're asking from the consumer, the end customer standpoint. Why would they go with one option versus the other?
Sure. Why the Nerdio? Why do I care about Nerdio versus everybody else out there?
Right. So, the truth of the matter is, if we are working with an MSP that has a customer, the customer doesn't really care or know that it's Nerdio. They just want an IT service that works, that's reliable, that's performant, that is supported by someone they know and trust, and that is their, IT services provider. And that IT services provider then has a choice. How do I deliver on that value that the customer is looking for? And they can do it in many different ways. They can, put workloads in Azure. They can put workloads in AWS. They can go with Nerdio. They can build something on-prem. And what we find is that if they want a turnkey solution that will work out of the box and not one that they will have to engineer from scratch and learn in a hard way on their first few customers until they become proficient and good at it, then building it yourself, even if you're not managing the plumbing, right, the metal and the infrastructure side of things, if you're putting it in someone else's cloud, but there's just so much additional knowledge that needs to be created to properly deploy VDI in a cost-effective way that provides the right user performance, right? That's not a trivial challenge. Budgets are not a constraint, then certainly it's a lot easier to do, but doing it in a cost-effective way is not easy. So I think a lot of MSPs are not looking to, spend years developing a service offering and building that expertise, and that's where Nerdio comes in. That gives them all the pieces in one package. There are other providers that could certainly do components of this. Certainly there are lots of great DaaS providers out there that can provide a desktop, which would kind of be just a shell that you still have to manage yourself. You still have to make sure that you're managing the images and managing the antivirus and everything else that comes along with it. There's certainly great infrastructure service providers where you can run servers. There are great security companies, great backup and disaster recovery companies. All of the technologies are well known and understood, but they typically come as point solutions that someone is responsible for integrating together. And the integration is the challenge that we aim to address. We've done that homework. We've created the software that does it for you. Why would you want to do it from scratch yourself?
I understand. Makes total sense. And in the future, so, all this sounds all fabulous. It sounds like you have everything I need and then some. But there has to be things that are, you have a roadmap. Well, what's coming in the future? I don't want you, to tell me things that, you're the secrets, but, what can we expect from you guys in the future?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. So as I mentioned, Azure just launched earlier this year And Azure is a huge strategic focus for us because, Microsoft is getting very excited about, Nerdio's capabilities and helping them increase Azure consumption in the SMB market through their channel. Because right now, I think Microsoft has done a phenomenal job getting Office 365 adoption. Everyone is either using it or in the process of migrating or is planning to migrate in the near future, right? Everybody.
Sure.
Azure, on the other hand, is kind of this beast. It's this complex, capable platform, but it's so difficult to, understand how to price and sell it first, but then also, well, how do you provision and manage it second? And a lot of the channel partners that sell into the SMB space are being told by Microsoft, you got to sell more Azure, but they can't figure out how to do that in a cost-effective way that's better than what they're doing today. And we hear that over and over and over again in all of the conversations we have. And what Nerdio for Azure does is it solves that challenge by making it a turnkey solution that removes the technical complexity from a partner that has to provision it themselves. But I think equally as importantly, we've created some unique, intelligent auto-scaling capabilities inside of Nerdio that optimizes the environment running in Nerdio to size it up and down throughout the day based on the expected user load. So if you have users that, group of users that work, 8 to 6, there's no reason why the desktops that are supporting, why the servers that are supporting their desktops should be running in the middle of the night or on the weekend. So we've created technology that optimizes that environment on basically an hourly basis throughout the day and sizes it up and down to accommodate the expected user load. So on the weekends, the system will get much smaller. On the weekdays, it will get larger, and it will change throughout the day based on those parameters. And what we've seen is that there is, savings of up to, 60% in Azure compute that result from properly and dynamically resizing this environment, which now answers the question of how do I cost effectively deliver this as a service to my end customer without charging them more than they can afford to pay. And so that's been a huge focus for us. We're also building additional onboarding capabilities. So for data migration, we're integrating with some, well-known migration companies for Office 365, email migrations, and things like that. And we're also focusing on performance monitoring, but more than just looking at system metrics like CPU usage and disk I/O type of parameters. We actually want to know, well, what is the user experience like in terms of seconds to do things? So let's say if a user logs into their desktop, how long does that take in seconds? If they open up Outlook and send an email, how long does that take in seconds? And we've created, a platform that's, going to be live very shortly that for each and every desktop inside of the Azure environment, there is going to be monitoring on a basically hourly basis to measure user experience by actually, kind of logging into the system automatically and performing these tasks and timing them. So that also gives administrators great visibility into the changes they're making to the environment to see what effect they have on real user experience.
Makes a lot of sense. That's really great, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Those are all the questions I have. Is there anything we left off? Thank you very much for your time. I have one more question. Any plans for AWS?
Very common question. Nothing concrete at the moment. We've definitely decided to make Azure our first focus for the public cloud.
Sure.
I think for obvious reasons because of the channel that we share with Microsoft. But nothing precludes us from going to AWS or porting this to Google as well. So. Sure. All of those things are definitely on the roadmap. I just don't have any definitive timeframes for those.
Makes sense.
Azure Stack is another thing we're really excited about to be able to leverage and answer the question. It was, again, I like this automation, but I don't want it in the public cloud. I want it in the private cloud, but not your private cloud, my private cloud. So we're looking forward to actually releasing a version that's going to integrate with Azure Stack as well.
Makes sense. And that should changes the business considerably away from just SMB into almost enterprise too in many ways, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you got it. Well, thank you so much. Anything I left out, I'll go ahead and give you the last word.
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Doug, and kind of share our vision for IT as a service and the type of technology we have available for service providers to do this for their customers.
Absolutely. Oh, I did one last question. If somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do?
Great question. So getnerdio.com is our website. Lots of great resources there, videos to kind of demo the product so you can see it firsthand. A way to sign up for free trials. On our Nerdio for Azure platform, we actually give 10 seats for free for life. So you can go online and sign up for a trial or even a full account for life for up to 10 seats to get really a sense of the technology and the power that it has.
You got it. Well, thank you again. We'll go ahead and call this an episode. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guest for today, Vadim. Great job. A really interesting solution, and I'm really looking forward to following these guys and see what they do in the future. The world is about, centralization, about, desktop as a service, about Windows as a service, and about the cloud, right? This is just really phenomenal what these guys are building. So definitely check it out. Head on over to their website and have at it, learn more. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, definitely tell a friend. As always, that's how we grow. So please tell a friend, tweet it, put it on Facebook, put it on LinkedIn. As I always like to joke, smoke signals would be cool. And if you do, please take a video so I can see that. And, what else do I say? But head on over to www.dabcc.com for the latest and greatest cloud virtualization, desktop as a service, VDI, mobility, AI, IoT, news and support resources. We have just tons of stuff up there, updated every single day, and it's just a great place to stay up to date with what's new. So what else do I say? But thank you very much for listening to DABCC Radio.
Say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.